because I was so sensitive to others that it was really very hard for me to feel myself. What did I need? What did I want? Who was I? I was constantly discovering who other people were, but I didn't really take the time to discover who I was. And so as a result of that, I really grew up with not much sense of self. And so when I was 21, that really came out very strongly, that I had no sense of self. Who I was, what I wanted. I didn't know anything about boundaries. I was so used to opening wide and sensing everyone else and making sure that everyone else was happy so that I could receive the love and the attention that I was so longing for that I didn't get from my mom.
Hi, I'm Biz Cush, a life coach and therapist, and your host here on the Awaken Your Wise Woman podcast. We're talking to women all over the world who found their way back to themselves, to their inner knowing, to their intuition, to their wisest self. We're exploring how to feel alive, authentic, engaged, and fully present in your life. Let's awaken your wise woman. Hi, and welcome back to the Awaken Your Wise Woman podcast. Whether this is a first time listening for you or you're a seasoned listener, I appreciate that you're here and welcome you to the podcast. I'm your host, Biz Cush, and I'm excited about our guest, Phoenix Gould. But a funny thing about this guest is that her VA reached out to me to be a guest on the podcast and talk about the impact of having a narcissistic mother and how you can survive and thrive through that. And I know this is a hugely popular topic for my podcast when we've talked about narcissism and narcissistic parents or parents who carry very strongly narcissistic parts. But when I got the request, I responded and said, would Phoenix be willing to talk about being a highly sensitive person and the impact of a narcissistic parent on that sensitive child, sensitive adult? And it turns out that was a great question to ask because Phoenix herself is a highly sensitive woman and experienced growing up in a home with a narcissistic mother or a mother whose narcissistic parts really were so blended that it was very hard to receive unconditional love. And the thing about narcissism and parents that have severe mental illness is when we're highly sensitive, we are so attuned to others' parts. We're so attuned to their emotions, their feelings, very small gestures, their shift in mood. And so when those parts are super active in the parent and they can't provide grounded, connected parenting, unconditional love, our sensitive parts jump into overdrive. We learn how to accommodate, how to people please, how to be hyper aware of others' emotions and feelings. And I'll share other episodes where I've spoken to other clinicians and experts on narcissism and how that can impact us and how we can learn to manage that. So you can check out at my podcast all the episodes at Awaken Your Wise Woman, and the show notes will include links to those episodes. And that's just a little bit of what Phoenix and I are going to dive into. And so once again, I'm so excited to have her on, but also grateful that I thought to ask if she'd be willing to talk about this on the podcast. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Phoenix. Hi, Phoenix, and welcome to the Awaken Your Wise Woman podcast.
Hello, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for having me.
So nice to have you here. I'm excited to connect with you. I'm excited to explore high sensitivity with you as it relates to narcissism. But before we jump into that, if you could share a little bit about yourself and kind of how you came to know that you yourself were highly sensitive.
Yes. Well, I grew up with a narcissistic
Mm,
mother, and I think I discovered or became really aware of the fact that I'm very highly sensitive when I was in my early
mm,
20s, because I was able to sense into other people, know what they're feeling, know what they're thinking, know what they were
mhm,
expecting. And also, I felt by things that were going on around me. So other people's behaviors would have strong effects on me. I would feel often emotionally overwhelmed. I think that was kind of like the first
mm,
signs. But as well, I developed some spiritual practices and had a lot of spiritual experiences that others could not relate to. And so I discovered then that I was aware of things or sensitive to
yeah,
other things.
yeah. I find, well, I have quite a few clients who have had narcissistic parents, and the struggle for them as highly sensitive beings was because they were so highly attuned to others' feelings and emotions and what was going on for others. When their parent was either disconnected or unkind or difficult, it was that much harder for them. They really took in so much of that dysfunction, I'll say. But I'm just curious for you what your experience was growing up in a home with a narcissistic. I assume you grew up with her in the home. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mm,
Yes. Yes. I think what you said is exactly that, that I was highly
mhm,
sensitive. And on top of that, the narcissist demands that we pay attention to them. And that is our way of survival, is to be highly attuned to their needs, what they want, and then supply what it is they need so that we are not in danger, right? So that we don't get punished, we don't experience the wrath. And so for me, I was so highly attuned to my mom. That was the first thing I would do when I would see her in the day, right? Where's she at? And I would know whether she was happy and whether it was going to be a quiet morning
mhm,
or whether she was already struggling and there was some anger and I had to then appease her, or whether there was such to so that I could feel safe. And that, of course, became a pattern for me to check into people that way, which became a really big problem later in my life. Because I was so sensitive to others that it was really very hard for me to feel myself. What did I need? What did I want? Who was I? I was constantly discovering who other people
mm,
were, but I didn't really take the time to discover who I
yeah, yeah.
was. And so, as a result of that, I really grew up with not much sense of self. And so, when I was 21, that really came out very strongly that I had no sense of
Mhm,
self. Who I was, what I wanted. I didn't know anything about boundaries. I was so used to opening wide and sensing everyone else and making sure that everyone else was happy
mhm,
so that I could receive the love and the attention that I was so longing for that I didn't get from my
mhm,
mom. And so there was that. And at the same time, I was really suffering from an overwhelm of my own emotions because I felt insecure, I felt ashamed, sad, and I could see that other people were different than I as well. I could feel that they were being themselves, they were being spontaneous, and I constantly felt that I was not enough. I couldn't be spontaneous, and I constantly tried to be who other people wanted me to be. And so I felt ashamed about that, a lot of sadness and confusion. I didn't know what was going on. And so at the same time, those emotions were so overwhelming for me that sometimes I was just feeling all of that, that I couldn't be in the moment, that I couldn't be with other people who I was meeting. I couldn't have a conversation because, first of all, I could sense them so much, and then I could sense all of my own confusion and feelings of self loathing at the same time. And it was just too much. It was very hard to bear.
Yeah, I can so relate to that. I think without knowing that I was highly sensitive, but yeah, as a teenager, sort of being in company with others and being so unsure of myself, who I was, how I fit in, did I fit in, and why could I tell how everybody else was feeling, but it didn't seem like anybody else knew what was happening with other people, right? They weren't as concerned or attuned, but that picking up on
Yeah.
of other people's emotions and the overwhelm, I can totally relate to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so as you moved into your 20s and were recognizing that things were unsettled, overwhelming, unsure of sense of self, was there a path that helped you find your way to where you are today, which seems like you are a much more balanced and spiritually aligned person today?
Yes, definitely. I met someone who was, on one hand, a trained psychologist, and on the other hand, a Native American Indian, and was trained by his tribe as a shaman.
Mm,
And he merged those two branches into a new kind of treatment, which really resonated with me because it taught me about spirituality and being more sensitive to the beings around us, nature, and as well really helped me to come to peace with myself, with my emotions,
mhm,
so that they weren't overwhelming anymore. And he really helped me to rebuild that core that I never had.
mm,
Growing up with a narcissistic mom, I did not get that core of self-confidence and knowing I'm a good person, and knowing who I was, that normal people get
mhm.
when they grow up in a loving home.
Right.
And so he helped me to rebuild that core,
Mm.
and it changed everything for me.
Yeah. Well, I just
Yeah.
hear like so much of the sort of getting to know, but accepting and learning to love yourself with all your sensitivities and, getting to know who you really were at your core.
Right. And he really helped me to appreciate that sensitivity and to make good use of it,
Mm,
which at that point he was the only one that could really understand,
yeah.
what I was feeling. And it was lovely to speak with someone who had similar experiences and who could kind of guide me.
Wow. Well, and
Yeah.
shamanism is and to mix it with psychology, I think is a really beautiful practice. I'm just met recently a woman in my area who is a shaman as well, which it's just being in her presence just lifts me up often, just to be around that very grounded sort of, but also openly spiritual person. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, because I think before I kind of discovered spirituality, for me, it was kind of something that was not grounded. It was something kind of, somewhere up here. But really, it's true that spirituality can be incredibly grounding depending on how we use it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and so I know just from your VA reaching out that a lot of your work centers around helping people. I don't know if it's women in particular, but who have also experienced the impact of narcissism and narcissistic abuse and sort of finding help them refine themselves, I suppose. But is that what drove you to do this work that you do? Just you knowing.
Yes, it was really my own healing path
Mhm,
and my own past, knowing what it is like
mhm,
to grow up with a narcissistic parent, knowing what it is like to be in a romantic narcissistic relationship,
mhm,
and the trauma that it causes and the big ramification it has on our life.
yeah,
And from there, really, it was my healing process, because I was in such a bad shape in my 20s that now I think I was very, very close to having borderline personality disorder, which is very common for children who grow up with a narcissist.
okay.
And that healing journey that my guide and mentor led me through was so powerful right from the start. It began to instantly change my life. And in the long run, like, I am now in a place that I would have never dreamt of reaching. And I really wanted to pass that on. There was a time in my life when I felt like, okay, this first part of my life was all about me. And now the second part of my life, I really got that spiritual message. Now it is about the rest of the world and being of service. And it became really clear to me that I knew that healing path inside out because I had walked it myself. And so I really wanted to help others and be by their side as they walk on that healing path. Because it's incredible, what kind of levels of healing are possible. I never imagined it. I never knew. And I'm fascinated still by how far we can come when we do the work.
Yes. Yes. Funny. I just had a conversation yesterday for a different podcast. They were interviewing me and talking about healing and like, is it possible to heal at any age? And I'm like, if you're willing to do the work, it can happen for sure at any
Yes.
age. Yeah. Yeah.
When did your healing work start? Your own personal healing work?
Yeah. So I am an early childhood trauma survivor. And so a lot of my healing journey came later because I think there wasn't any base for that to be healed and in my family of origin that just didn't happen. And so I think when I had my own children, I realized how much was disrupted inside me and how much I felt like I was kind of living from a place of, yeah, just like trying to please others and figure out what other people needed versus like, what do I need? And really didn't know anything about high sensitivity until probably my 50s. So it has come, I've jumped in deep later in life, and it's been, as you say, amazing to me that I feel like I am where I am today, that it's lovely. It's really to live from my heart now versus just kind of surviving and living in fear from fear all the time. It's just really beautiful. So yeah, thanks for asking. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's amazing, no? Because some people have that feeling that maybe it's too late for me. What's the point? But really, things can change so quickly once we start doing the work. It is so worth it, no matter when we start.
Yeah, I agree. I
Yeah.
agree. Yeah, it's just so powerful and just makes living life so much easier. I mean, not that it's
Oh my
all
God.
roses
Yes.
and sunshine, but yeah, life feels much less like a struggle and the I think you shared a couple of times about that sort of emotional overwhelm, like being able to manage the emotional overwhelm and treat myself with care and kindness is just lovely. It's just such a new way of being.
Because it takes so much
Yeah.
energy to keep emotions and feelings at bay and that struggle. No, that is the most amazing part is that I remember feeling that there was something wrong with me at the core.
Oh, yeah.
There must be something wrong with me because I could not function the way other people functioned around me. And I was thinking, why is it so hard for me?
Yeah.
And it's amazing how life can become so much easier when we heal at the core,
Mhm.
when the core gets put together in a really strong way. And of course, there will be struggles, but then we can move through them. We can sail through them with much more ease than feeling like we're drowning every time something happens.
Yes. Yes. I 100% agree. And so for you, like, how is it that you're helping women move through this journey, of
Mhm.
healing?
Yes. Well, the people that I work with, and it's mostly women, but also some men,
Mhm.
have had early childhood trauma. And as a result, that core of them isn't really strong. They don't have that self confidence and that self trust that makes living easy.
Mhm.
And so, what I work on with them, if that wasn't built by their parents, this core, is I help my clients to build that core themselves. And as you know, even one little change in a big spider web has an effect on the rest of the spider web.
Mhm.
And so that change can happen quite rapidly, that we can notice, oh, something's easy now that was hard before. So I like to do the deep work, and I work in the body. I always tell my clients that they're trying to think something through logical and it's not working. I tell them you're really smart, and if you could have worked it out by thinking about it, you already would have. And so the answer lies much deeper in the body. And so my work is helping people slow down, go into the body, and feel, sense, experience what is going on. Because also in the body, we have that wisdom, that part of us that knows everything about us, and especially the very next step that we need, which, some people call it intuition, but I somehow feel it goes deeper than intuition, that intrinsic wisdom where you know in your bones what you must do. And so part of that deeper inner work and going into the body is also finding that part and befriending that part and making a really strong connection with that part, so that they have something they can tap in with and know what needs to be done and what is good for them and what is not good for them. And from there often happens a lot of inner child work, lots of shadow work, and inside of us, because there's so many parts of us that we have banished, right? That we don't want to see. And when we stop running from them and slow down and look at them, they often look a lot smaller than we thought. And when we start to befriend them, they actually turn around and become supporters of where we want to go. And so there's that befriend all the parts of we come to be at peace.
Yeah, befriending the parts. That's been the work that I have been getting training in. Like, there's the sort of therapy model of internal family systems, which is all about parts
I
where
love that system.
me too.
Yeah.
And doing my own personal therapy that way. It is amazing to me that, yes, when we're approaching these exiled or banished parts with compassion and care and love and really seeing and hearing and knowing them, that healing goes so deep.
Yes. Because something you fought before has now become your best friend. And there's love, there's understanding, there's compassion. It is such a fast way to come to self-love,
Yes.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful. So beautiful. And so if you were to describe high sensitivities to a person who really didn't understand it, who really doesn't know what that means in terms of who you are as a person and how that makes you who you are, how would you describe that to somebody?
Right. It's a very good question. Well, to me, it's that, a normally sensitive person can often move through the world with a purpose, with a goal, because it's easy for them to be in the moment and connect with other people, connect and relate with the world. And in my own experience and with others who are highly sensitive, one, there is that heightened sensitivity of things that other people are not aware of. So a lot of the attention we have goes towards those things, right? Where a normal person will have a conversation with you and just sees you smiling, and then, they go on with the conversation. If I have that conversation with you and I look at someone, I will see the slight moments of doubt about what I've just said, or like a sadness or an irritation or confusion. I'm picking up on those slight things. And it can distract from the conversation.
Yeah.
Because now I'm all interested in what's going on inside of you. And I can't take.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, especially if you grew up in a home where you were always taking care of how other people were feeling, that has to be primary, right? That has to be right at the forefront of like, oh, what was that? Was that a frown? Was that a smile?
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes. So maybe the comparison would be if a normal person lived in a world of gray tones, black and white, and a highly sensitive person is aware of the blues, the yellows, the reds, the oranges, all the colors, but also a tremendous amount of sounds, and also energy at the same time. So, our brains are busy processing all that information,
Yeah.
and it makes it's a lot of information to process. So sometimes it can get us tired,
Yeah.
and it can get us distracted as well from the task at hand.
True. That is very true. Well, and I find too that not only can it be tiring, but it takes me so much longer to just
Mm.
process in a conversation. I might be being very attentive and listening and hearing you and taking it in, but then for me to internalize, figure out what meaning I'm going to take from it or what I need to say, it might be later or tomorrow where I'm really like, "Oh, yeah, that was the thing I would
Yeah.
either come back to or wish I had
Yes.
said."
Right. Because also we are highly affected, strongly affected by what's going on. Right.
Yes.
And so it's not just a noticing, oh, yeah, that's what's going on, but we're actually affected physically, mentally, spiritually by
Mhm.
what is going on. And so we can linger in processing that for quite a while we're still around other
Yeah.
people, right? And to them, that might be very strange. It's like, what's going
Oh, yeah,
on?
yeah.
Or
Where did she
we have to
go?
go back
Yeah,
home and,
right.
yeah. But the amazingly beautiful side is also that we are aware of other things. Like for me personally, I'm aware of plants and I
Mm.
have conversations, not,
Yeah.
verbally, but in my mind, and through the energy, I can connect with plants and other spirits. And so there's that beautiful side that our world is just a whole lot bigger in some ways
Yeah.
than to some other people.
Yeah.
And that is the wonderful and rich side, that we can dive really deep. We can feel really deeply and intensely, and it can be so satisfying and fulfilling.
Mm. And I love that. I love that so much. And I think part of the healing process is being able to recognize that we do take in so much, right? From plants, from color, from sound, from light, and learning how to not take it in all at once, like to work on, I don't know if it's really being selective, but recognizing that it can overwhelm. And how do I take care of myself if I'm in an environment where there is a lot of stimulation? How do I then just take care of me so I feel grounded and peaceful and present? Sort of, yeah, learning how to kind of figure out what's important to take in without almost being like a receptor for everything. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I know that I've been a part of a few Facebook support groups for highly sensitive women, just offering, but also if I need support, they're there. But I do notice that in some of the groups, there's a lot of conversations around just always feeling overwhelmed, just in their life all the time. Are there ways that
Yeah.
you help your clients sort of manage, if they are highly sensitive, manage that aspect of life?
Yes, I have found that the easiest way really to manage overwhelm is through what I call radical self-love,
Mm,
which is an unconditional love, accepting where we are. And there's a specific tool that I use, a specific meditation,
mm,
which I also have recorded. We've spoken about this before. If your listeners want to have access to it, we could put a link underneath so that they can
absolutely.
download it and use it.
Yeah.
See, I have found that, when we are overwhelmed, one more emotion just seems so big. We just kind of want to run away with it, from it. We don't want to feel all those emotions.
Mm,
And the secret is to stop running and turning around and feeling them. And of course, that can't happen when we are in a setting with other people, right? We need to do that work on our own.
mm,
And so if there's overwhelm, we can sit with a part, and the meditation will lead people through this and come to unconditionally accept the overwhelm in that moment. And when we do that in the right way, all of a sudden something relaxes and there's a peace, which is quite fascinating and magical because it can happen within 10 minutes. And then we can slowly work through all the other emotions that are being present. And the more we work through them in the same way, they come to peace. And the way I describe it usually is like that our emotions are like little kids when they want candy, right? They want our attention and they want to know that they're there and what they want. So if you're a mom, you know that when your kid wants candy, they're like, Mom, I want candy. And if you ignore them, you're just like, it's too much, I can't. And you ignore them and you walk away, they will not stay where they are. They will come after you.
Right.
And they think, oh, Mom's not heard me. I have to say it louder. And it's the same thing that happens with emotions, right?
Yeah.
The more we want to ignore them, the louder and stronger they become. It's like, Mom, I want the candy. And then they yank on your pants until you stop, right? It gets bigger and bigger and bigger because all they want to do is get the message across. And it's the same with the feelings and with the emotions. They have an important message, which comes later. We can learn how to use that, right? But at first, it's so overwhelming and so big. And the more we want to be rid of them, the more and pressure there is and the more present they seem to be. And so if we can learn to stop running and to slow down and feel the emotion and discover why it's there and send some unconditional love with it, which means in this moment, it doesn't have to change. It doesn't mean that we give permission for all these emotions to take over. They actually start to relax. They go like, yeah, she hears me, she sees me. They just want to be seen and heard. And once we experience that through some techniques, then it becomes very easy to start listening to them because we get it. It's like, okay, I just need to listen to them. And then they will they will not be so relentless. They will let go and I can find some peace. And that takes rid of that gets rid of the big overwhelm. And then we can start to do some healing work around all those emotions and why they're there and what's going on. But yes, the overwhelm can disappear so quickly when we know which tools to use, in my experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love the metaphor of it being little children looking for candy. And honestly, if we're looking at our emotions as and parts of us as children versus like this annoying thing that I'm feeling, it's like, oh, how do I give love and care and kindness, compassion to this
Mm-hmm.
versus avoidance and running away? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and you see, and the beautiful thing with the radical self-love is that we will love all parts of ourselves, even the part that says, I don't want to listen to this darn emotion. Like it's driving me crazy and I'm overwhelmed. I just want to get rid of it. We can send that unconditional love to that part of ourselves, which you know from internal family system so well.
Yeah.
And then it comes to rest and makes space for the other emotions.
Yeah.
It's just like a clearing out. It's like we're inside the house and everyone's knocking on the door. And we just pick the first one and bring them in and hear them out. And then the person goes, sits down in the chair. We open up the next door. Okay, next one, coming in. It's like taking care of all these emotions that are knocking frantically on the windows.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We can deal with them one by one. And no one has to be pushed away. They can all come in. We have space for all of them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and it's so true that there's usually more than one emotion, that it's not just one, which sometimes it just feels like overwhelm. But when we're piecing it apart, you realize that there's a lot going on underneath that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
Ah,
Yeah.
Phoenix, this was such a beautiful, heart-centered conversation, and I really appreciate your being on the podcast. And I would love for you to share with listeners how they can find you.
Sure. Thank you so much. I enjoyed our conversation just the same.
Yes.
So people can reach me through WhatsApp. So people can reach me if they want to reach me very quickly, that same day, it's through WhatsApp
Okay.
and it's a Canadian number. And it's +1 for Canada, and then 780-268-9888. They can also reach me through email, which takes just a few days maybe for me to respond. And that email is phoenix@phoenixcore.ca.
Nice.
I also can be found on Facebook under Phoenix Gould. I have 2 Facebook groups. One is for women healing from the narcissist. So it's called Women Healing from the Narcissist. The other one is Men Healing from the Narcissist.
I will include all of that in the show notes for anybody who.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks again for taking the time to be on the podcast. And I really look forward to sort of keeping in touch through social media or wherever it is in the world. Yeah.
Yes, please send me yours as well. I'd love to stay connected.
Awesome. All right. Thank you. What a beautiful, beautiful conversation with Phoenix Gould. I just love talking to sensitive soul sisters, and this was no exception because her energy and spirit just shined right through the conversation. I don't know if you all pick up on the energy of the people that are on the podcast, but when I'm feeling it, it just makes the conversation flow so easily when I feel in alignment with my guest. And I think what often surprises me every time is that the more I connect with healers and helpers out in the world, the common threads that run through healing and through personal growth are just there. They're so collective. And whether it's shamanism or this radical self-love and healing work that Phoenix is doing, or for me using internal family systems and parts work as a base for the therapy that I do and the coaching that I do, it all feels connected. And that is an amazing thing. Well, I hope you will check out Phoenix's offer. You will find all the information in the show notes on how to get that meditation and that radical self-love audio. I hope that you will take care of your sensitive parts. If you're a highly sensitive woman, I hope you will take care of yourself and all your parts, no matter who you are. And have a great week, and I will connect with you next time here on the podcast. Thanks for listening to the Awaken Your Wise Woman podcast. The information in this podcast is not a substitute for seeking help from a licensed mental health professional. Music by Andy Cush, sound editing by Laura Disler, and show notes by Kathy Cush. If you'd like more information about me, Biz Cush, and the resources shared today, go to awakenyourwisewoman.com.